Hey, brothers and sisters, this is Chris Anderson. This is a special edition episode of Walking with God. Got Mr. Tim here, my father's friend, avid golfer, and a gentleman himself. He's here to tell his near-death experience, his NDE, where he saw Jesus and God. And without further ado, I just want to thank you, first of all, for coming out here. This is very important that you're doing this. We just want this to be as authentic as possible. I've been waiting to hear this story for a very long time since he's been telling this. So please just give us your story. You know, what happened, how this affected you, and we'll ask questions throughout if we have anything. But
okay, I'll go way back to the beginning. First of all, probably wouldn't be here if it wasn't for my wife and her devout believe in Jesus and God and our faith. We were actually, she's in my baby book as my first playmate.
oh wow,
Months old. And it's kind of funny because I went through my baby book a couple of years ago and there's her name as my playmate. Our families were very close. And back in the 60s, you know, you would, on Sunday, you'd all get in the car, you'd go visit friends and family and stuff. We spent a lot of Sundays playing together and all of that. We were very close. It's the first girl I ever kissed. I was 7.
wow.
7, 8, on the slide in my backyard.
I have a 7-year-old, Asher. No kissing.
So the reason why I go back that far, she was so instrumental in this. We had both been through a couple of divorces. I had one that was devastating with 3 little kids, and another one, and then she got divorced, and we ran into each other at my mother's funeral. She has multiple sclerosis, and at the time she was walking with a cane, and I believe she was blind in one eye. And shortly after that, she went through a very bad divorce. Her husband of 35 years was a pastor, and while she was out of state taking care of her father with cancer, he had an affair. And she's not the kind of person that would tolerate such a thing, and pretty much ended the relationship. She, we got in contact about a year after my mother's funeral. My sister died. I didn't see her at that funeral, but we started emailing each other. And she found herself in a position where she was living with her sister, and her husband was pretty much trying to cut her off, or well, I can't really say that, but the way the relationship was, she lost contact with her 3 sons. Okay, it was a bad property contention over the divorce. She was working on her master's degree and dropped out when her father got sick and she had to go take care of him. So she was in this situation. We started talking a lot, and I offered her to come down and stay with me, get a job in this area in Northern Virginia, where she was living. There were not many job opportunities whatsoever. Central Pennsylvania. And she came down. She got a job with a retail company, and as a manager. And I was always in love with her, tell you the truth, but we kind of fell for each other.
Sounds like it.
The work schedule was terrible. They didn't know she had MS, and by looking at her, you couldn't really tell. But after a few months of arduous training, going around to various stores and malls, traveling on her own, she found herself at a point where she had optical neuritis attack again, went blind in one eye, tried to continue working without telling anybody. It ended up with her needing help out to the car after work just to get home. She went on disability. We had never had, either one of us never had plans to get married again. However, she lost her health insurance. I said, we need to get married. So we did. We got married, and we kind of eloped. And she was very angry with God at that time. Her marriage of 35 years broke down. She lost contact with her kids. She was very angry. So we lived a lifestyle for a few years. Wasn't exactly Christian. I at this time was agnostic. I was born again when I was about 20 years old, my second year of college. I got very close to my parents when I went through the experience. And then I kind of lost faith. And I'm an engineer. I don't typically believe anything unless I can prove it myself. So I describe myself as an agnostic. I believe God existed. I didn't necessarily believe that the events recorded in the Bible were real, were true. I didn't believe that people would write a book 2,000 years ago and it would hold true. And I didn't know who had control over the writing of that. I knew it was written, or I believed it was written years after Jesus was crucified, and I questioned whether or not people could remember it the way it happened. You know, I didn't believe at that time that you could remember a quote that you had heard 30 years ago. Okay. So I was agnostic. And my wife Linda, she was angry, and she started renewing her relationship with the Lord after a few years. So I retired in 2016. I was 56. Went and had a physical. Found out I was an AFib, and we did a couple of cardioversions. First one lasted 8 months or so. The second one lasted 3 months. Went back into AFib, and they referred me to an electrical specialist, and he said cardioversions won't work in your case. You need to do an ablation. Okay, this was I think my first ablation was 2019. It was on my right atrial. So I read the report from that. It was pretty much routine. And about a year later, I thought I went back into AFib, went into the doctor. I said, I believe I'm in AFib again, but it feels different. And did some tests, and he said, you're an atrial flutter. And I believe it's your left atrial. Okay. But he wouldn't be able to tell until he did an ablation. Okay. Did the ablation on that, worked fine, came through it just fine. When I went in for those, I never really had surgery of any kind. I still have my tonsils. They're enormous. And I found out when they tried to put me on a ventilator, they tried 3 times and had serious issues. But anyway, I have huge tonsils, right? First time having surgery of any kind, and Linda prayed for me before I went in every time for the cardioversions and the ablations, and I felt it. And I've kind of jokingly said she's in good with the Lord, but I always believed it, you know, even though I said it jokingly.
Yeah.
So my faith in that started to grow. I mean, I started believing the prayer worked. Okay. And the second ablation, I guess, was in 2020. And then 4 years later, just recently, this last January, as a matter of fact, I was on a golf trip with your dad, and I started having AFib again. And AFib's very disconsistent. The problem with me, and I've had monitors on me to measure things like, that would detect PVCs in AFib, and I've been told, like, when I'm not in AFib, everything's normal. But you can feel PVCs, where they would tell me everybody has these, but I can feel it when it happens. I guess I'm blessed in that way. And when I go into AFib, I can tell instantly also.
Right.
Because when you go in AFib, it's like you're driving down the highway and all of a sudden you get a flat tire and everything starts wobbling. You know, you can feel it. So went into AFib again, and I was referred to another cardiologist, and he said, "Yeah, we're gonna have to do another ablation on you." Like, okay. So went in, had an ablation, and finally got in there, and I guess it was late April. I think it was April 22nd, and the doctor came out, and talked to Linda, and said the work they had to do was extensive. Okay, and I read the report. And normally they would go in and they would cauterize or use the freezing or heating techniques and burn nerve pathways around the pulmonary arteries coming from your lungs to the atrials. In this case, he had to make several lines across the back of the heart and so on, across the atrials. So I just knew it was extensive. And he told her that there's only so much they can do, but he thinks it'll be good. So far, I'm not in AFib. It's been 8 months. Okay. So anyway, after that happened, after the ablation, I think that was Monday, and on Thursday, you know, I went over. We had a golf tournament going on, and I manage a golf league. I went over there to check on the guys. I got a cart and I rode around just checking on everybody. I felt great. Well, I really didn't feel great. I felt like things just weren't working right. I felt very gassy or very bloated or just didn't feel right. And by that time I was feeling a lot of pressure up here. And I went out and visited some friends on Thursday. I pretty much behaved myself. And went to bed at 10 o'clock. And I woke up at midnight and I was having trouble breathing. Okay. And, you know, I couldn't, my lung capacity was not where it should have been, probably about half. And being a proud American man, I figured I'd just roll over and sleep it off. Big mistake.
Absolutely.
And you know, when you leave after having an ablation, they say contact us if you have any issues. Well, you don't really know what the issues are. You don't know what to look for. But fluid retention can be a serious problem. And in hindsight, I had some after my first ablation too, but it cleared up. In this case, it was about midnight, having trouble breathing. Rolled over, went to sleep, woke up. I believe it was about 5 minutes to 6. And I couldn't breathe. I was on my side and I could barely breathe. And I sat up and Linda was still asleep. I said, "Honey," she said, "What?" I said, "I'm in trouble." And she sprang out of bed, went and got her phone. And she comes back in, she says, "Are you okay?" I said, "Wait." She says, "Should I call 911? I said, "Wait." I waited 20 seconds. I said, "Call 911. And she went out, she called 911, had them on the phone. Got through very quickly. I got up from the bed and I walked out to the living room 20 feet, and I stopped, put my hand on my chair, and I said, "I can't breathe." I was holding my chest. I said, "I can't inhale." And she's on giving them the address and all that, and then I felt myself going out, and I told her, I said, "I'm dying." I sat in the chair, I said, "I'm dying," and she screamed, "Help us, Jesus." And I saw luckily the ambulance was there probably under 5 minutes. It's 2 miles from our house. It was under 5 minutes. I saw the flashing lights, and she went running for the door. And before she ran for the door, I said, "I'm going." I said, told her I was dying before I sat down. I said, "I'm going. I'm sorry, and I love you." And she was screaming and crying, which you would expect. And the lights went out. From that time until I woke up I woke up in the ICU on a ventilator. I had absolutely no memory of anything, no visions of anything, no dreams, no nothing. It was just, the time was just gone until I woke up. And I came to and I saw a light. Linda was holding my hand and she says, honey, you're in the hospital, you're on a respirator. Don't try to do anything. Now I know that was, I got in the hospital Friday morning. I think they rolled me in there within 10 minutes of my house. My blood oxygen was 52%. I came to Saturday afternoon on a ventilator, and I don't know what time in the afternoon. I know my 3 kids were there. One came from Christiansburg, one down from Pittsburgh, and my daughter and son-in-law came from Culpeper, and they were all there, and Linda was there. One thing I'll tell you is if you ever find yourself in an ICU or have loved ones, being there, letting them know you're there is very important, extremely important. So I told Linda one time, I kind of felt like my father, when she moved down in with me, my father felt like I rescued her and saved her life. She was not in a very good place. And I had told her that if I can, I'll make sure she goes first. Okay. That's the only reason I'm here. But it was 3 or 4 in the afternoon. I was waking up. I was on a respirator. Being awake while you're on a respirator is an absolutely horrible thing. I constantly felt like I was suffocating. I feel now like I know what it's like to drown, or I know what it's like to be waterboarded. You can't say anything. I believe I had a feeding tube and a suction tube in my stomach. I had an oxygen tube and a suction tube in each of my lungs. And and there's like a hook holding everything in, and it felt like that was digging in, and I felt like the oxygen was being pressed into my lower lung, and it was stopping it, and I wasn't getting enough air. There were a number of times that the nurses used a wand and put it down my throat into my lungs and suctioned my lungs while I was awake. Linda told them, Linda's a nurse, she told him he needs more medication, he's coming out of this. And they were saying, we're giving him all we can. And I did not want to stay under. Okay. And I went through a lot of time that Saturday afternoon between trying to write. I thought I was writing quite well, and they showed me what I was writing afterwards. I'm normally a bad speller, but it was bad. It was kind of like I would start off, I felt okay, and I would start off writing big clear print, and then it slowly come down, and then I knew sometimes I would kind of wake up and I was writing and the paper was here, and I would be off the page, and I was still trying to write. And it's kind of funny. I came in the golf league I run. It's called the Bunker Boys, and I wrote one time. I said, "Do the Bunker Boys miss me?" And I asked about particular people. So there were a few people I wanted to know if they knew of my condition, and it kind of comes back into play later. So the same people that I thought of. But so here I am this Saturday afternoon. I'm not going too slow.
No, you're doing fine.
It's important that I try to remember everything.
Absolutely, you're doing great.
Because some people, I talk to people about this. Some people are moved by certain things that I wouldn't think they would be moved by. So it was a struggle. They'd use the wand on me. They suctioned my lungs. I constantly felt like I was suffocating. I don't know technical reasons. I don't know if the ventilator was doing the breathing for me, and while you're conscious, your brain thinks it should be breathing, and you're not allowed to, so you feel like you're suffocating. I don't think my blood oxygen was all that low. I don't know. but I would kind of go in and out, and I knew who was there, when they were there, and so on. Okay. Linda was going to come back the next day. Visitors coming in at 8 o'clock. And one of my sons, she followed one of my sons home, and she was going to get a ride in the next day, I think with my daughter. But I knew she'd be in shortly after 8 o'clock. 10 o'clock rolled around and they all left. Around 1 o'clock, I realized that I was getting progressively worse. And in my room, my room's lit and I could look up and there was a clock right there on the wall. And I remember throughout everything, I could always open my eyes and see that clock. I knew what time it was. In the beginning, I wasn't sure what day it was. I thought I woke up Friday afternoon, and Linda told me no, it was Saturday afternoon. So, but I always seemed to know what time it was, and here it is, 1 o'clock in the morning, and I was really suffering. I mean, by 2 o'clock, I got to the point where I relived the experience of sitting in the chair and realizing that I was going to die. And at that time, it's kind of funny because before I lost consciousness, I literally thought to myself, so this is how it ends. I came to the realization, I said, so this is how my life's going to end. I didn't have a chance to think about anything else, but here I am approaching 2 o'clock, that period from 1 to 2, I started sinking again. I didn't think I was going to make it. And I started praying. I prayed to stay alive until I saw Linda. Because I heard the horror in her voice when she knew I was dying. And I couldn't bear to let her get that phone call. I wanted her there with me. I wasn't praying to stay alive. I was praying to stay alive until she came back in. And that was basically it. Okay. And after that, I was seeing things. I was flying from place to place. I was on Earth. It was kind of different, but I was flying place to place, and I would come back and I'd be looking at the clock, and I'm like, why am I hallucinating? Why am I seeing these things? And it would happen again. And I would be over a beachfront scene. I would be over marshlands. I would be over like red rock formations. And I would come to these places and I would kind of swirl around above just looking, and then I would just take off extremely fast to another place. And it was so fast, I can't remember traveling. Also, when I was doing this, I only had my vision. I experienced, first of all, I had no pain, no discomfort anymore when I was experiencing this. I had no sense of wind, no sense of sound. I saw no life. I felt like it was Earth, but there was nothing there yet. It almost seems like it was when the Earth was brand new. Okay. Don't know, but I saw nothing. No people, no nothing. Didn't hear anything. And I'd come back and I'd open my eyes, or I felt like I was opening my eyes, and I'd see the clock. Something that was different though, I was in an ICU room and it was lit all the time. But when I got to that point, around 2 a.m., I felt like they moved me someplace. I went down, I could see down a really long, dark hallway in the hospital. I knew I was in the hospital. Really long, dark hallway, and I couldn't see anything down there that would indicate it was ending, no other doorways or anything. So I felt like I was in a room, and I could see down a hallway, and here's this room, and my clock's still there. Okay. But it was dark, very dark. And then it happened again, and felt like I was traveling or seeing these things. So here I am flying, basically. I'm coming up, there's a field, I'm over a field, there's a wood line here to my right, trees to my left. And I don't know why, but I come up over this field and I felt compelled to go up over these trees. And I come over the trees and I look down and there's a tree that's down on the ground, all the bark's off, it's a gray dead tree. And there's somebody sitting on one end of it, straddling it, and there were two other people that were there. I sensed they were there, and they got up and they walked into the tree line, into the woods, and kind of faded away. Now those people that got up and walked away, they weren't people. They were, the best I can describe them, was like seeing static electricity forming their bodies the way they look, but they didn't look flesh. Okay, and they got up from the scene. There was a little campfire there, and they walked into the tree line, and then I looked down at the person sitting on the tree, straddling it. I was a ways away, and I thought, that's Jesus, immediately. And it was just, it's knowledge. It was just given, this is Jesus. Absolutely no doubt. There was no questioning it. Okay. And I looked, and then there's somebody else with him. And he's standing in front of him with his side toward him. And I looked, so that's me. So I'm probably a couple 100 feet above him. I knew it was me, but I was like static. I wasn't flesh. And my perspective of this was up above the whole thing. I could see everything. I couldn't hear anything. Apparently I could control the way I moved because I started to come down to get a closer look. And Jesus was sitting there on the tree, and he was straddling the tree. And I was at the tree, and I stepped over the tree and sat on it with my side facing him. And I was kind of slouched down, and I was like, what is going on here? I was like, I was being asked to take a seat. And to describe Jesus, all I can say is what I told Linda later on when I woke up. As she was holding my hand, I said, I met Jesus. I said, he's perfect. And he's beautiful. And that's what I got. He was absolutely, he was flesh and blood. He was not the forms that I saw myself and the others in. He was flesh and blood there. And he was just absolutely, he was just physically perfect was the knowledge I got. Okay. And he was beautiful. And there was absolutely no doubt it was him. And I knew he was there because Linda and others were praying for me. What I felt from him was compassion. I could tell that he had suffered too. And he was sitting there and he was grinning at me. He had his elbows on his knees and he's leaning forward to me like this and he's grinning. And I'm sitting there with my side to him and slouched down. And at this point I came down, felt like I was about 6 feet above him. And he's just grinning. I said, he's trying to say, what is he saying to me? What is he saying? And I get this view right up close. He's grinning, and I just felt him say, or he says to me, what are you doing? Okay. And then it was like, oh boy, what am I doing? What's been going on here? Then he leans forward, he bumps me right in the side with his elbow right here, and I felt it. Hovering above him, even though he leans forward to my body, or my image of me, and hits me, and I felt this thump in my side, and when that happened, I realized this was real. Now I knew I was really there. I wasn't hallucinating. This was all happening, and I felt him. And when he did that to me, he says, do you want to come back with me? I knew where he met. He was going back to heaven. He could come from heaven and come here, and he could go back, or wherever I was, he could go back and forth. And he asked me if I wanted to go back with him. I said, I can't, I have to take care of Linda. And he smiled at me. And then I saw my clock. I was back in the room and there was a clock, but I was in that dark room. I wasn't in the lit room, but I could see the clock. First thing I did is I prayed that I remembered everything. I said, I need to remember this. I prayed. Please, Lord, help me remember everything that I've experienced. And I believe I have. When he came to me, he was a friend. I felt compassion, and he was a friend there to help me. He was like the kind of friend you would have that you could always turn to. There was nothing holy that seemed holy about him. No robes, or he was a guy. He was just a guy that I'd like to go play golf with. Okay. He was wearing cargo shorts and a faded T-shirt and hiking boots. He was, as I told Linda, he was mid to late 30s, and he had a slightly receding hairline. His hair was straight back, was long, a little bit down his back. Straight back, I could see his ears. Beautiful thick hair. Everything about him was just perfect health, okay? And it seemed like there were highlights in it, okay? But it was dark hair, highlights. He had a short crop, black beard, and absolutely beautiful almond colored skin. Just perfect health. And like I told Linda, he was perfect and he was beautiful. And I prayed. I said, what was special about his eyes? I couldn't remember. And there were a number of things I prayed for. I prayed with questions, and I prayed. I said, what was special about his eyes? I knew there was something special. As soon as I did, I saw this image of him 2 feet from me, looking into his eyes. And his eyes were bright blue like the sky, and his irises around the edges are little like pinholes of bright white light. Just crystal clear white light. And it didn't come from his eyes, it was in his eyes. And his skin kind of glowed like a pregnant woman seems to glow. He was just beautiful. And I prayed and I said, what has been happening here? What's been happening? I said, Lord, have I been running from you? And I just got the sense immediately, yes, you've been running. You have been running. And I was scared to death to be taken. I knew I'd go to heaven because Jesus asked me if I wanted to go back with him. And I believed it, but I was not going to abandon Linda, and I was afraid that I was going to. Okay? And I don't care if it was just until 8 o'clock. So I was back and I could see my clock, and it was dark. After that, I never had a view of leaving again. I was there in my body and I was still suffering. I felt like I was suffocating. It was absolutely horrible. And I continued to pray, just let me live till she comes back. And then it was 6 o'clock, and the room's completely dark. I could see the clock on the wall, 6 o'clock, and there was something. I sensed that there was something here to my center, but a little bit left, and I could kind of see it was kind of like heat on the roof of your car in the summer or desert. You see kind of a fluttering or whatever. There was no light or anything, but I sensed this fluttering here. It was to the left, but then right here to the center of me, I started seeing light, and it was just started very faintly, little pinpoints of light. Started showing the outline of a very old man, okay? And the light was kind of flowing, but it was like looking at the ends of fiber optics, and it's just crystal clear, bright white light. Not beaming, but it was just light that was appearing, and it started getting brighter and brighter, and the light was flowing. Okay, so I could see this image, and it was flowing, and then it eventually turned into a face. Very old man, a lot of hair, huge white eyebrows. It was all just his hair was bright, crystal clear white light. And the light around him continued to kind of flow. It was moving somewhat. And whatever was to the left of him was still there. And I could never see his eyes. His eyes weren't there, but I could see his mouth. Really weird. Okay. And when this came into view, I knew immediately that this was the absolute creator of everything we know. And it was just knowledge given to me. You don't hear words, and it's not really telepathy, it's just you're given knowledge. And it's irrefutable, just absolute knowledge. And I'm the kind of person, I don't believe anything, but it was just absolute, this was the absolute creator of everything we know in this universe. And then the second thought, the second thing I got from it was, we are all his children, and he is our all father. Absolutely, we're all his children. And when this is happening, the flood of information, I have to kind of go slow and deliberate because it was so much, okay, that it's hard to explain to people how you get the information, but it's just all comes upon you very quickly. But the most powerful thing was the feeling of love when I realized that he was my father. The flood of love was so intense, and I've told other people, I can't even describe it other than the love you feel. I've had 3 kids. I've watched them all be born, holding them for the first time and feeling that kind of love. This was 1,000 times stronger. And everything else in the world and everything else you experience becomes very insignificant compared to this. I realized that we're all his children. And we're all connected by his love. And try to make sure I remember everything, and it's pretty much, he says to me, he says, do you want to come back with me now? And he used the word now. He told me, thinking about it after, told me, this was the second time. And I told him I felt like a 3-year-old being somewhat defiant. I didn't want to be defiant, but I told him, I can't. I said, I can't, I have to take care of Linda. And he chuckled at me. He just kind of, hoo, hoo, hoo. And he was gone. And when he left, I felt whatever it was to his right just came into me, right on the left side again. Right when that happened, I just felt this amazing connection with everybody, and love that that's the only way I can describe it. Is I just felt connected to everybody much more. Well, we were all connected. And you know, if somebody told me that was the Holy Spirit, I want to argue it. I don't really know what the Holy Spirit is, but I think it's what God's love and how he connects, how we're all connected to him. But I felt that. And I felt like he was happy with my answer. When I told him this, I said, I have to take care of Linda. I had absolutely no desire for anything here on earth. I had no reason to come back. My kids were all happy and healthy children, all adults. I did my job. But I told her that I would let her go first. And that's what I told him. That's the only thing I was thinking when I told him this. And he was gone. And I saw the clock, and it was like 6:05. And any suffering was gone immediately. I had complete relaxed. I don't remember having any issues breathing after that, or any sense of even being on a respirator. It was gone. And I started feeling good immediately. And I heard Linda talking shortly after 8 o'clock. I knew I was going to live. I knew that I was given this life back. It was good because I was gonna fulfill my promise to her, but there's nothing really here that I really needed to come back for. And I think anybody in that position, you know, one thing I understand now is when people go, this is the hard part. I believe we're here to learn, and we're here to experience this, and we're here to suffer through things. But when he left, I felt like he was happy with my answer, and I started feeling better. And I just heard her shortly after 8 o'clock. Then I heard a doctor saying he's doing good, let's get him off this respirator. And they took me off the respirator at 11 o'clock. And apparently that's something that's kind of risky. And they told me to try to talk, and I did. I sounded like Batman. But I was able to talk my normal voice within 15 minutes. And I was sitting up in my bed feeling fine within a half an hour. I was ready to go home. A doctor that treated me in the ER came up, several nurses that knew me. The doctor came through the door, and he just looks at me and he goes, "How is this possible?" I said, "What do you mean?" He goes, "You're sitting up." I said, "Yeah, I feel pretty good." He says, "This doesn't happen." He said, "You're very strong." He turns to Linda, he goes, "I cannot believe this is the man I treated when he was brought in here." I was like, "Yeah, well." And I told him, I said, "Well, I had some help." And I completely believe I had some help. But yeah, and you know, forgive me for having to stop and think, but it's quite overwhelming, you know. I believe that Jesus came and saved my soul, and I believe he did because people were praying for me. And I know when I do go, I'll go to him the way I should. Okay, and I know, you know, I thought about it afterwards. I realized the light that made up God was the same light I saw in Jesus' eyes, and I knew it's the same spirit. So, I don't know. What else do you want to know?
I mean,
How do I feel now? I used to be an agnostic. Absolutely. He was the creator. It was God. It was the creator of everything. I believe Jesus was given a body, a perfect body, for what he went through for us. And he can come back to us. And I believe they hear our prayers.
Absolutely.
Now I pray every day.
So why do you feel it's important to get this story out now? And obviously, thank you for doing this. You know, we asked him to do this, but because we feel that it's important to get the story out. But just kind of want to know if you think like
After I went through this, I've continued to think to myself, why was I blessed? Okay. I was never the type of man that anybody would think would be on the top of God's lists. Mm-hmm. Okay. But then, you know, I don't know, why not? Mm-hmm. So when I'm blessed with something like this, I have an obligation to tell people about it. I'm not a preachy person. Mm-hmm. I don't tell people what to believe, or I even know now, I'm not here to pass judgment. You know, what I believe, I learned from all of this is we are all God's children, and the message I got was he loves every single one of us equally. Mm-hmm. You cannot look upon another person and think God loves you more than another person, because he doesn't. He loves us all equally. Mm-hmm. Okay, and that was one of the things I learned when he left me, that he loves every single one of us equally. And if you're passing judgment on somebody, you're passing judgment on another one of God's children. Okay?
Amen to that.
If you do not treat them like you want to be treated as one of God's children, I think you're going to have to answer for it. Okay? The love and compassion from him is absolutely overwhelming, but he will let you know if you haven't been a decent child. Okay? I mean, I felt like when I told him I couldn't go with him because I had to take care of Linda, I mean, I felt very defiant. I was like, I don't want to tell him this, but this is what I feel. This is all I can say. Because other than my promise to take care of her, I would have gone with him, you know, and there's nothing here I would have missed. I wasn't drawn to ever come back here for anything. So, yeah, but I thought after, like, why am I blessed with this? Because now I feel like I have absolute knowledge. Okay. And it's been an interesting road for the last 7 months because I've never been into organized religion. Never really had a great respect for priests or pastors. I don't believe any of the professionals can be any closer to God than I am. And now I feel like I've met them. Okay, I don't make any claims to know anything or know anything more than anybody else, but I know when you feel God's love in person, I know what that feels like. And you know, I hear a lot of pastors talking about it, and you know, I can when we'll be listening to something or watching a YouTube video, I'm like, he gets it. I can always tell, and Linda knows when I say he gets it, it's because somebody's experienced something like I've experienced. So I don't know, where was I going with that?
Just with why your story is important, and just why we're getting it out there, you know. And I think
it's important because when I talk to people, first of all, I got back home after about 3 days. I sent an email. I sent an email out to all the guys in the golf league. I felt obligated to do it because I knew a lot of them were praying for me. Some came to visit me. I knew they were praying for me. I think Jesus came to me because Linda was praying for me, but I also think a lot of other people praying for me, and God hears it all. So I felt obligated. I kind of sent him a short summary of what happened to me, and I let him know. And I think I got about 20 guys that responded, and they were touched by it. And I was like, you know, if people can be moved by my story, then I'm obligated to get it out to people. I'm an introverted person. I've never really cared much about other people's feelings. I mean, I always felt like I was a decent person, and I don't think I ever mistreated anybody. But now I feel connected to people. I feel, to tell you the truth, even like golf, I tell the guys I love every one of you, and now I feel like I do. And I experience a lot of things with guys dealing with physical issues and illnesses, and I really feel it. Okay? I really feel sympathetic. I know what they're going through to some extent. But now I also feel like it's suffering that we all are going to go through. And it's how we deal with that that's important, and how we continue to carry and spread God's love within us that's important. And I know when people do go and leave this earth, they are not going to miss anything here. This is just temporary. They're not going to miss it. And it's just, you know, I know the love they're going to experience when they pass. I hope. Yeah. And I also, you know, I never really thought about good and evil and hell and so on. I don't even think I ever believed in hell. I feel now like there are a lot of evil influences and a lot of sin that try to get to us all the time. And we need to get through that, past that, and spread God's love in spite of it. And that's how we learn. And we're going to lose in this life. We're going to have hardship, and that's how we learn. You know, you're going to go to heaven with these experiences. After God left me and gave me the option, I asked, I said, did I just miss the opportunity to see my mother and father again? And immediately, the answer was, that would be a mistake. I actually sensed where they were. They were a long ways away, but I sensed they were there. And I learned that was a mistake, and the reason it was a mistake was I still had things to do here, and when I do get there, it's going to be eternity. You don't need to be in a hurry to see them. But I also learned that my relationship with them will be different. Okay, they're my mother and father here on earth. When I get to heaven, we're all God's children. Okay, and I sensed that. It wasn't an overwhelming sense that they're still my mother and father. It's like something we shared here, but it was a very short period of time. And when we get there, the sense that we're all God's children is so overwhelming that everything else seems very insignificant. Okay, and that was interesting, and I haven't really given it another thought after that. So, and I bring that up because this is one of the things where I don't know. I try to remember everything because little things seem to impact other people. I have a cousin who's a Methodist minister, by the way, and his wife died of ALS, and it was years ago. And his father, my uncle, he was the closest thing I had to a big brother. I had 5 sisters, no brothers. He was like a big brother to me, 10 years older than me. And when I left the hospital and was going home, I told my wife, told Linda, I said, I feel I have a need to talk to my Uncle Russell and Aaron, my cousin. And I sent the email out to my golf league. I sent my uncle, and he contacted me right away. And he said, I'm going to pass this on to Aaron. Aaron's wife had passed on from ALS. And he, apparently, I didn't know it, but he was having some struggles moving on. And he said that, and my uncle was concerned about him at this point, and he was having issues moving on, and he said his son, he believed he felt like they would have the same relationship once he got to heaven with her. And I talked when he came out to my house, and we talked, and I told him this part. I said, you know, our relationship once in heaven, it's not going to be the same. I never read scripture. I didn't know if that was in the Bible. And he's a minister, and he's like, that's what it says in the Bible. That, you know, marriages are for earth. We're all married to Jesus when we get to heaven. And I didn't read scriptures, and I came out of this, and I'm saying these things, and you know, first of all, when I came out of it, and Linda was there, and I said, I met Jesus. He's perfect and he's beautiful. She just started crying. She had always prayed that I would become a faithful Christian. We've talked about it since then. I said, you gotta be careful what you pray for, because I'm the type of person that will have no faith unless I went through something like this. And I said, now I've gone through something like this, and I absolutely believe, because it's true to me.
Yeah.
So I'm like, you know, maybe you brought this on.
No, I mean, your story is important, and it's captivating, and you do such a great job of explaining everything, and I mean, just down to the details of, you know, what they look like and describe. Like, thank you so much, because this is what gets people talking, and this is what gets people thinking, And this is exactly what this channel aims to do. We're just trying to get people talking, get people in the Bible, and then we'll just do some walks with people. So I mean, do you have anything else that you want to discuss about your experience, or if not, I'd like to say a prayer for you and for everybody, and end that way, and then give you the last word if you got anything
Absolutely.
else. All right. Well, I'm actually gonna get down on my knee and pray. So you don't have to.
I'm
though.
a little old for that.
It's all right.
You might have to help me back up.
All right. Dear God, thank you so much for bringing Tim and his story and everything into our lives. Thank you for Jesus and for yourself giving him that nudge. Thank you for guiding him to give us these words, these uplifting words of your grace. Thank you again, God, for putting him near us so that he can tell his story, so that we can show that you are real, and that your grace, and that you're God, and that your glory is forever. No matter what happens to us, either in this life or after, we're all your people. We love you, God, and we wish to triumph with you after all death, and we love you, Lord. Thank you very much for everything, and God bless. Thank you.
Amen.
Amen. I'll leave you with the last words. If you got anything else that you want to say, thank you to everybody for watching. Appreciate everything, so thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, thank you,
Thank you.
brother. Appreciate it.